What up with it, YouTube world? You in the house with your boy Chin Checker. Say, man, we're gonna get right into this video. This is some justice here. This is about the cop who murdered Cameron Lamb. He finally has to go to jail. Let's get it.
The police, well, they tried to get out of serving time for murder. That did not work out. Let's put up the picture full mass. I will explain it to you. For the first time, the cop who murdered Cameron Lamb finally sees jail time. Good. So Eric Davaconare, the Kansas City police officer who fatally shot Cameron Lamb, is finally seeing jail time. So if you remember this cop, he's a piece of work. He's seeing jail time after a denied appeal to overturn his guilty conviction. So the officer was sentenced to only 6 years in prison after being found guilty of second-degree manslaughter and armed criminal action in 2021. Wow. But after a judge granted him an appeal bond, he was allowed to remain free from prison while the appeals process was ongoing. The process took nearly 2 years and was finalized this week, determining his conviction stands. All right. So this cop, who had served with the Kansas City Police Department since 1999, was the first white Kansas City officer to be convicted of killing a black man. Okay. Not the first one to do it, but the first one to be convicted of doing it. It's believed that his trial was the first for a KCPD officer who killed someone in the line of duty since 1942. Lamb was shot in a pickup truck on his own property by the cop. The father of three had been tracked to the property after police helicopter observed him chasing his girlfriend as she sped away from him in her Mustang. When officers arrived at Lamb's home, the officer testified that another officer, a detective named Troy Schwam, commanded Lamb to step out of the vehicle. The detective recalled that Lamb's hand was splayed out over the steering wheel. So the officer claimed that he saw Lamb starting to raise a gun toward the detective. So he shot Mr. Lamb in order to save the detective's life. What a noble piece of Neither Lamb nor the detective fired a weapon. There are conflicting accounts over whether Lamb even had a weapon, which was a central part of the controversy for prosecutors during the officer's trial. Some officers testified to seeing a gun, but others said they never saw a gun at the scene, including the detective that he says he was just trying to save. There's more. According to the ruling, the officer could not sufficiently challenge the trial court's verdict in his case. The judges called on his points on appeal a jumbled argument after he attempted to dispute the trial court's conclusion that the shooting was not justified. The officer argues that he cannot be convicted of armed criminal action if his conviction for involuntary manslaughter was in error, because the officer has failed to establish error with respect to his conviction for involuntary manslaughter. His arguments regarding his armed criminal action conviction also fail, the ruling reads. The officer also apparently argued that he acted with criminal negligence in order to downgrade his manslaughter charge. Nice try, no cigar. The appeals judge or judges stated that his behavior on the day of the shooting conflicted with his training and many KCPD policies, and that evidence, including the officer's own testimony, showed that he intended to fire his gun and shoot Mr. Lamb. Now, I want you to understand the irony of this. The appeals court is saying, listen, you basically messed yourself up by all of these dumbass arguments in the appeal. It's jumbled. And you're contradicting yourself based on the appeal motion. In addition to that, you decided to take the stand. You didn't have to. You have the right to remain silent. And because of your own testimony on the stand, you have convicted yourself away from the appeal that you thought you would get remedy from. Lamb's family, who had been waiting years to learn of this cop's fate, celebrated the court's decision.
Good.
Quote, I could not believe it. However, I felt like we finally got the answer that we were gonna get, Laurie Bay Lamb's mother told KSHB 41 News. We don't want to see nobody who's so instrumental in the protection and the livelihood of their family taken away, especially a father. But we also don't want to see nobody that so blatantly breaks the law and think they're not going to be held accountable, Aquil Bay Lamb's father said. Let's put up the picture of the beautiful family. Remember, when they decide to eliminate the life of a human being, it's not just that life they affect. This man had a beautiful family. During the appeals process, the officer was backed by state officials like the Kansas Attorney General. There were several reports indicating that Governor Mike Parson was considering granting the cop clemency, which Parson denies. When one of the most conservative appellate court panels upholds the conviction of a police officer despite the unethical and unlawful interference of the Missouri Attorney General, a clear message has been sent. The officer is guilty of the homicide of Cameron Lamb. We eagerly await for the moment when this officer is taken into custody and treated like any other convicted felon in Jackson County. One violent KCPD officer down, minute to go. Yes. Steve Young, founder of the Kansas City Law Enforcement Accountability Project of KC, said, I agree with you, sir. One down, minute to go. One of the most conservative courts you will find in any jurisdiction upheld the conviction. Now remember, this man was granted bond after being convicted of murdering a person while being on duty. He was convicted of it. They said he did it. Appeal, Your Honor. All right, no problem. Release on bond, pending outcome of the appeal. So this man has been convicted by the processes of the judicial system. He was in uniform when he did it. The fact finders of the case said the man committed homicide. He has to go to prison. He files an appeal, he gets out. What do you think that says to the family? The family assumed the fix was in. So this ruling was a surprise to the family. But the actions of the cop, the actions were so egregious, even though politics came into play, the Attorney General basically illegally inserted himself into this investigation. That came into play. With all of that, these judges were able to back away from the politics, rule on the facts, and put a killing cop inside of prison.
Yes.
All right. Jordan, thoughts here?
This is rare, unfortunately, that we even see this outcome, and it's, confusing and disorienting with how we got to this point. It's a good thing for sure, and I think you really got to underscore that quote that we're talking about one of the most conservative appeals courts there, and that this is the outcome there shows just how guilty this cop was. So I feel bad for the family that they had to endure years of this, lengthy legal proceedings, all of these different maneuvers. I'm sure they're relieved to an extent, but nothing brings your family member back. Nothing can solve or fix the problem, but I'm happy for them. I hope they find justice. I hope they feel like they have found justice, and maybe any additional remedy as applicable. But man, nobody should have to deal with that. Nobody should certainly have to deal with this lengthy, drawn out court process as cops try to cover for each other, or the government steps in to try to cover for the cops. That has to be infuriating if you're in that situation.
Yeah, and listen, the way the judicial system is orchestrated, you could be convicted of taking a human being's life, file an appeal, and get out on bond for years after conviction. You get convicted of theft, misdemeanor theft, file an appeal, you stay in jail pending the outcome of the appeal. You don't get to go home.